What more can we say about the story of The Last of Us Part 2? I think it's a very challenging story. The first game is about love. Part 2 is about hate. And we really deserve something to showcase the work that goes into that. It really is a love letter to the community of like, listen, this is what we made. We want to share this with you.
Technically, this game is more marvelous in the sense that it looks a lot more brighter. It looks a lot more crisp. The DualSense is phenomenal. One of my favorite controllers in video gaming. I think it's really only one area that I really wish that they had focused on. And the game is a lot faster at loading for sure, but I still kind of feel the loading at certain points, especially when you die. It should be just instant. We shouldn't have to get back to the whole, here's a tutorial screen, wait till it kind of loads a little bit and then hit continue.
Where I really found the most value is the commentary track. You are getting the most context to a lot of the scenes that you might not have understood, questions in regards to how certain people acted or felt, getting a perspective from Neil or from Ashley or Troy. It just has that balance to be reassuring that, you know, what you're feeling in this scene is what they wrote into this story.
Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts today. And guess what? It is the return of the Cordycep crew. We are back talking about The Last of Us. You thought we were done. You thought 2023 was the big year of mushrooms? Guess what? Let me tell you. We're back with more mushroom talk. No, we're talking about The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5. We're going full spoilers today. We have lots to talk about, but we got to introduce the rest of the crew. Joining us once again, I was trying to think of like mushroom names for you guys. I'm like Shiitake Shahbaz, you know, but then I'm like, but what can I do for Anthony? I don't know any A mushrooms or any G mushrooms. But Shahbaz, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm trying to think, you know what? I don't know many of the mushroom or the fungi like family. I don't know much of their names. So I'm sorry. Anthony, you're just going to be
I'm pretty sure
mushroom.
You can create any name you want.
It's
because
true.
No one else knows the different types of mushrooms.
How about this?
I don't think Chef Gordon Ramsay is watching this.
Mushrooms.
Listen, I was going to say, he's not a fun guy, but he is a fun guy. It's Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
But which one is he not, though? Is he not a fun guy or is he a fun guy?
Well, you're going to have to go back and listen to what parts I really enunciated when saying that.
Shoot.
Anthony, how you doing, my friend?
You know, I wish I was not alive.
What?
I wish I was like, you know, being cooked. I was a cooked
dead.
mushroom right now.
Oh, yeah. What a way to start this episode. We're talking about The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5. This is something that we've been waiting so long for. We were, you know, when this announcement first came out, and if you go back and listen to our mainer back in November when we were like, oh my gosh, this is finally happening, you know, where there were the rumors, there was that ESRB rating. We're like, oh, is it coming? Is it not going to come? And then it finally arrived. And we are so lucky that we actually had a pretty long lead up to play with this and really experience it. So I want to say thank you to our friends at PlayStation for making this happen for us, providing us with codes. We've been really lucky to have about a month with this game to really get under the hood, see what's new, let you know, is it worth your time to return to this world? And there's lots to cover. There's lots to talk about. Of course, this is the movie podcast. If you want to catch brand new episodes all throughout the week, we have lots of new episodes ready for you. Check it out. We have a really monumental episode coming out on Friday, which is our top films of 2023. Within that, we also recap the Golden Globes. We talk about Tom Cruise and Warner Brothers. But the big thing in that is that we introduce a new way to support our show. So for the last almost 5 years, the movie podcast has been, you know, independent. And we are at a stage now where we want to offer you ways to support us. We love what we're doing. We wouldn't be doing what we are today without you listening, without you watching this. So if you like what we're doing and you want to support us, we'll have ways for you to do that. So make sure you tune in on Friday, see all of those options that we'll have for you, because we want to keep doing what we're doing. Because like I said, we really, really love it. But today is all about The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. This is releasing on PlayStation 5 systems on January 19th. So this week, you'll be able to return to the world of The Last of Us. We know you fell in love with the series last year. So if you're returning to The Last of Us and you want to see what comes next, what the HBO series is going to be coming next, we'll probably talk a bit more about that later in today's episode. But I do want to give a full disclosure that there will be spoilers for what this game is. If you want to hear us, go into depth about the story, we actually have our very ever first game review out, available still, for The Last of Us Part 2. We were joined by our friends from Untitled Movie Podcast about Rohrbeck and Nate Sheldon from Geekcentric. That is out. If you want to go back, if you want to rewind the clocks back 4 years and hear our fresh thoughts on the game when it first came out, go check out that episode. But today was all about, how we're feeling with the game, what's new to the game, and is it worth your time? So I don't want to waste any more time, but I want to say, Shahbaz, start us off. Give us your first reactions to The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5. What was your headspace going into this, and how has the story, sat with you over the last 4 years?
We've been huge fans of this series, game, and now television for quite some time. And The Last of Us Part 2 is no stranger to its controversy when it first came out, to all the way now when people are saying, do we need a remastered? Oh my God, we got to pay full price. Oh my God, we got to pay $10. And I think a lot of what we're going to be discussing today is going to really kind of guide you on a path of what is the best option for you when it comes to buying this game. And we want to provide our most honest opinion on it. We love the game. We love the story. And I think up until now, I have fallen more and more in love with this story as time has gone by. I think watching season 1 of The Last of Us on HBO even helped my love for this game grow even more, because you kind of see some of the groundwork being laid for what this game is going to be eventually. You got some possible Dina hints in the first one, a character very prominent, very important in this game. The story luckily hasn't changed. They didn't go ahead and add a new twist in the game or change the ending around. I love that about this, because again, like I said, this game had so much controversy going into it that sometimes the pressure that can really pile on you. I'm glad they stayed true to their guns. I'm glad that they stayed true to what this game is, because it is not only one of the best games, it's just one of the best stories I have ever played. It's a story that I take my time with. Even when I'm going back to play it right now, I think this is my 3rd or 4th playthrough, and I'm like, still just in awe as I'm playing it. That said, I think that technically this game is more marvelous in the sense that it looks a lot more brighter. It looks a lot more crisp. The ray tracing is great. The particle effects are amazing. The DualSense is phenomenal. One of my favorite controllers in video gaming. And I think I love the way the bow kind of, the triggers feel when you pull on the bow.
It's always the bow. The bow is always like that. It's like, what can we do to put haptic feedback and resistance? It's like it's always that feeling of the bow being pulled, and then you shoot it, and it feels incredible every time.
It's 2 things for me. It's the bow, and also when you make a Molotov cocktail in this game and you're filling it up, not only are the sound effects amazing, but you feel a vibration of like almost like water being put, or alcohol really in this case, being put into a glass bottle. It's such a specific feeling and sound that they were able to capture it in the controller. So I'm like just pouring Molotov cocktails all the time and just feeling it vibrate in my controller. It's amazing. And I love the lost levels. There's a lot of great features that this remasters come with. The lost levels alone are fantastic. I think going back and kind of playing them, kind of seeing like the behind the scenes of what the developers kind of go through, where it's not 100% polished, but seeing how they set it up, putting those little commentaries in each portion of that, like, hey, this is why we cut this out of the game, or this is what this part of the game was meant to represent. And there's really a lot of cool like gaming mechanics that they've put in. There's like I don't want to spoil too much, but there's an area where there's like almost like a fun fair in a way, or a fair. I don't know why I called it a fun fair. A fair.
You can have fun at the fun fair. That's okay.
You have fun at the fun fair, and you can kind of play a bunch of the little carnival games. Carnival makes more sense. But I also love the director's commentary, or I guess really just the commentary in general that plays over all the cutscenes within the game. So the game, it has a lot of cutscenes. And so whenever you get into one, you'll either have like Neil Druckmann come in, or Hallie Gross, or Ashley Johnson, or Shannon Woodward, or Neil, oh my God, friend of the show, who plays
Troy
Joel.
Baker?
Troy Baker. That's
also,
it.
Hallie Grossman, not just Hallie's not gross.
Hallie Gross. Sorry,
Hallie Gross.
That's her username
we're
online.
Cool like
My
that.
apologies.
That's why we're cool like that.
I just call her Hallie G. Actually, I don't know why. But yeah, you have all these amazing people kind of just coming in and, throwing in their 2 cents about what this scene means to them. And I love how they talk about some certain moments, like the part where you kind of meet up with Jesse, for example, and they talk about how, yeah, when the trailer first dropped for this game, people started to figure out that Joel was dead, and we wanted to kind of persuade them the other way. So I love how they kind of talk about that misdirection that they had to do, and it was just really cool kind of getting the behind the scenes of it all. Really quickly, I want to touch on some of the things that I'm maybe not a big fan of in this remaster. I think it's really only one area that I really wish that they had focused on, and that actually comes down to its loading. The game is a lot faster at loading for sure, but I still kind of feel the loading at certain points, especially when you die. It should be just instant. We shouldn't have to get back to the whole, here's a tutorial screen, wait till it kind of loads a little bit and then hit continue. That kind of still pulls me out and reminds me of when I used to play it on PS4. Granted, on the PS4, the load times were so much longer, but you would think that in this remaster, that would have been fixed. I kind of wanted a little bit more of that instantaneous being brought right into the game. It is much faster, but not as fast as I hoped or thought this version of the game would have been.
I think that's a great spot to pick it up, because there are obviously a lot of quality of life improvements, and there's a lot of praises that we'll be singing for this game very soon. But yeah, the loading times for this game are improved, but it's those little quality of life things, Shay, that you're 100% right, where it's like, okay, if I die, if a clicker comes ripping out my thorax, and you're like, okay, that happens, cuts to black, wait for the tutorial thing to pop in, give it an extra couple seconds, then you hit X. I know it's such a first world problem, but when you're trying to do something, so for example, I got stuck in a situation when I was playing where I was, when you're going to the TV station in Seattle and you get introduced to the trip mines pretty much, right? The wires that are kind of being set up everywhere. What was happening was I was in an area where there's 4 of them all around you, and you have to do it very specifically, right? And obviously, the fault of my own that I died there a couple times because I was just being very, carefree while playing. I was like, you know what? Let me shoot this with my shotgun. But when you die, you load back in, and then if you come back in, you maybe move too quickly, you die again, and then you wait, and then you die again, you wait. So it's just like, okay, let me be very methodical here, because like those little loading screens, they do take time, where you look at something like Ghost of Tsushima or where they actually let you skip the loading screen if you don't want that. The tutorial screen, you could actually turn that off in Ghost because you just kind of load back in. Same with Spider-Man. You die, you come back in really quickly. Obviously, there's a lot going on in The Last of Us Part 2. This is probably the best looking game ever on the PS5. It looks phenomenal, and it already looked incredible on the PS4. So when you're seeing it on the PS5 this time around, you're like, this looks better than real life. This is incredible looking. But yeah, you will pay for those extra little loading screens still. And also, the fidelity, as incredible as it is, I'm playing it like I remember it looking. When you see the side-by-sides from that, the reveal trailer, you're like, yeah, it's not a dramatic difference from what we got, because what we got before was already incredible. So fidelity wise, yes, there are improvements, but it's not like if you're going into this and you want like a night and day experience, it is not a night and day difference, especially if you're playing on PS5 with that PS5 patch. It looks incredible, but it's not going to be something right away that you're going to be like, yes, this is different.
You mean the PS4 version, right, with the PS5 patch?
Yes, if you're playing on PS5 with the PS4 version on PS5 patch, yes, exactly.
Yeah, it's almost identical. And I think, again, I know that's not how the game was marketed, because that's not the point. The game already looks amazing. How can you make it look better? But I think for me, the biggest thing was, can you shrink the load times to almost nothing? Kind of like how Spider-Man 2, a natively built PS5 game, I don't think has any loading screens really. I was kind of hoping for that. But I mean, it's not a huge issue, but I kind of wish that was the main thing.
Anthony, jump on in. We'd love to know, how has the story of The Last of Us sat with you over these last 4 years? It has been a controversial game when it came out because story reasons, obviously. We're going to get into that again. Reminder that we are talking spoilers today. Ellie, Abby, Joel, there's a lot to talk about. So please let us know your thoughts coming into this version of The Last of Us Part 2.
Well, the last time I played this game was, 4 years ago. I did a back-to-back playthrough, finished the game and then platinumed right after. And that was the last time I played this game. So coming back to it, it was nice to kind of just go through the story again, understand the characters, and just kind of get back into the Last of Us world. Last year we did the remaster of the first one, which is great. Fantastic game. And then here we are with the second one. And really the game runs really smooth on the PS5. Like I thought that, frame rate and any type of bugs, I didn't experience anything like that. I just kind of had this really fluid game through, and really it was a bit of a challenge to understand like what was the huge difference between the PS4 and PS5. Like I'm looking forward to hearing from other people and going side by side and understanding what those elements look different in, because the game itself is very cinematic. Like it has like a lot of filters and film grain, and it's hard to kind of distinguish the two when it comes to what's the PS4 version look like and what's the PS5 version look like. But I found that it was a lot smoother. I felt that, yes, the load times are so much faster, even though they could be even faster. I do like the DualSense support, especially when firing a trigger. It feels like you're firing a trigger if you're throwing a bow and all that. Another really cool thing is the accessibility has been improved so much more on this game, and for accessibility needs people, they are going to find a huge advantage playing The Last of Us 2 Remaster. I was looking forward to No Return, and for me, even though I had fun playing it as like maybe my first or second playthrough, there's a lot left to be desired from that playthrough, because it's very short, it's very quick, and you get to the final boss, and once you defeat it, you kind of start over again. And sometimes with this type of gameplay, you just wish there was a little bit more, like in terms of enemies or the length of each, we'll say, environment that you kind of go into. And I do think that when it comes to No Return, I really think it should have been like 3 or 4 different bosses as instead of the one arcade boss that you experience at the end of that No Return. Another big thing is I really don't like dying and then starting over again.
Yeah, it's the roguelike, right? Like, and it's interesting
Yes.
that PlayStation has done that now with Valhalla as well too, where that's very integrated into the story, and the whole point's to die. Where with No Return, you do your runs with the different characters and you unlock different things. But yeah, once you've kind of mastered that, it's all kind of, your mileage is going to vary depending on if that's your type of gameplay or not, if that's your type of thing or not.
Yeah, and for me, it was so quick that I really didn't really care to play it again over and over again. Even if I was playing as a different character, if I was playing as Jesse or Dina, like, yes, they have their own characteristics. I just didn't, I didn't care to continue that journey. I also, the skins are really nice to have, especially when you do the gameplay playthrough with those skins. Like I played as astronaut Ellie a lot, which is different because you're wearing an astronaut suit when you're talking to these characters.
You're having the most depressing ass scenario happening around you, and Ellie's just in an astronaut suit.
Yes.
I use the astronaut suit a lot as well. Don't worry.
I know.
Another thing I would have loved to see would have been like just new weapons. I think that would have been cool to have, like just adding new weapons. They're just the same weapons that we've experienced in the first game or the part 2 of that game, but I just wish there was more options for weapon and modifications. I think that could have been another good incentive of just purchasing it and like saying, okay, this is the money that you're spending is where it's going to. Where I really found the most value is the commentary track, because the commentary track is where I found, you are getting the most context to a lot of the scenes that you might not have understood, or maybe you understood, but maybe you had like some sort of reservations or questions in regards to how certain people acted or felt. And I think getting a perspective from Neil or from Ashley or Troy, that it just has that balance to be reassuring that, what you're feeling in this scene is what they wrote into this story, or things that you might have missed or things that you didn't even know about. You're going to get a lot of Easter eggs from the commentary track. And that's where I really found the value to this game. I enjoyed listening to their how they conducted a lot of the sequences, or how they did the motion capture, or like Shay said, where, they people were catching on that Joel died, so they kind of used Jesse as a way of, with the brown jacket, to kind of like, second guess you in that sense. So it's really, really cool commentary track. And it's a lengthy commentary track because it's a very long game, and I really, really enjoyed their perspectives, and they have a lot of fun talking about what they experienced during that run. Things that, like, guitar free, that was fun. I guess playing as Gustavo is a fun feature, but like, I'm not good at playing the guitar, and I don't think I'm good at playing the guitar through a video game. So it's just, again, it's a cool feature, but the lasting appeal is very short. Lost levels are a really cool tool. Again, putting the context back into, how they construct and how they tell the story. Sequences that maybe made sense during the writing process, and then they took it out during, the actual, like, 6 months before the game was to release. So things like that I enjoy, but I also found myself trying to understand, like, is this worth $10? And, honestly, I came to this conclusion where I feel like, yes, $10 is not a lot of money, but it's also money. And I feel like Naughty Dog could have given this as a free upgrade to the loyal, Last of Us followers, and just say, hey, man, thank you for being a part of this world. Thank you for watching HBO. Thank you for playing last year's game. Here is this really cool incentive to have for your PS5 now that you've if you have it, if you've purchased it, this is a really good incentive to continue the game with us.
That's a really interesting point, though, because you're right. I think especially when we're coming off of God of War Ragnarok, where you're like, here is this whole free mode that is pretty in depth, that has a lot of cutscenes. You're getting a lot for free with that, and you're like, okay, well, The Last of Us Part 2, we did get a PS5 update for free, so you technically can play it with, the graphical enhancements and, fidelity and frames per second that you can't. What am I blanking on? Frames per second, yeah.
60 frames, yeah.
60 frames, yeah. You can get that with the PS4 version on PS5. I really look at this version of The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered as it's almost not even a director's cut, but like it's like a collector's edition. It's like me rebuying a movie that I love because there are, additional commentary tracks, and there are additional behind the scenes footage, just like me rebuying Lord of the Rings, because there's so much of the game itself, the story itself. I love it, and now I'm getting all the extras with it, and I'm glad that it would have been awesome to have this as a free upgrade. I 100% think PlayStation could have done it too, but I'm also thinking, like, what, still for this game to be re-released, it's still not a full price game for people who are going to experience it for the first time, or for people who are wanting to upgrade from their PS4 version for $10. It's not as much as I think we have seen studios do in the past, or they wouldn't have given an upgrade option, right? So I'm glad that at least there is an upgrade path there. But for me, for the game itself, I mean, what more can we say about the story of The Last of Us Part 2? I think it's a very challenging story. It's a story filled with hate. Neil Druckmann even said it. The first game is about love. Part 2 is about hate. And I think what this game does so much more than a lot of games have before for me is that it pushes back against you. It takes you out of your comfort zone. At the first game, you felt so powerful playing as Joel, or, taking control of Ellie. This one, to be relinquished to that control, to be witness of a murder, of a brutal killing of a character that you love so much, and then go on, this killing spree, revenge tale that The Last of Us Part 2 is. But not only that, then be put in the perspective of, the killer and of Abby. And I remember playing it for the first time and being like, I'm so angry. I don't like, why am I playing as her? And then Abby's sequences in part 2, I think I enjoy her story events more than what I played as Ellie, because there's so much that goes on with her story when you're going through like the the wolf camp, the Seraphites, going to like the Seraphite kind of island. There is so much in there, and then it makes you think, man, how are they even going to begin to adapt this over a season of television, over 2 seasons, apparently what they're going to be doing, breaking it up. There's so much that happens in this game. It really is long. I think the first time we played it, all of us finished it around between 26 to 30 hours. So it's a pretty dense game. And now you're adding on top of that the guitar mode, which I've been like, I'll be honest, I've been noodling around with that a lot. I think it's really fun. It's really cool, and it makes me excited to see what people are going to do with it. I really love the commentary. I think Anthony, you know, he nailed it, where it's like, this is, as somebody who loves The Last of Us, this is why you're upgrading to this version of this game, to listen to those commentaries. Sometimes you forget that it's on, and because the commentaries are the cutscenes are so seamless in this game, you'll just be playing, and then all of a sudden you hear people coming in and be like, "Oh, do you remember when we did this?" I'm like, "Oh my God, who's here? Who's talking?" Because they just kind of start talking and talking about these moments. And it's like every single moment that you are not in control of the game, you know, you have this cast of people there playing it with you. And it's a really cool way to experience this game, because you really do feel like you are playing it with the cast and the creators of The Last of Us from Naughty Dog, and that's really cool. I think the Lost Levels are a really cool addition as well too. I mean, it's not anything that blew me away, but it's just cool to see the process that goes behind a video game. And again, we don't get this too often. You know, someone I grew up loving Left 4 Dead. There used to be in Left 4 Dead this commentary mode as well too, and literally it looks the exact same as The Last of Us. You walk up to a little speech bubble, then you hear the developers talking. I really hope more devs do this, because video games are the hardest media in the world to make. What it takes to pull off a game like this, to pull off any video game, is nothing short of magic. And we really deserve, or they really deserve, to have something to showcase the work that goes into that. And I really love that's what The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered does. It really is a love letter to the community of like, listen, this is what we made. We want to share this with you. The fact that they're going to be including the documentary in the game as well too for Grounded Part 2. That's great. I love that when we started playing the game, Anthony, we saw the trailer for it and we're like, hold on, what is this? This isn't announced yet. And so we were so confused, and then they got announced a couple weeks ago, and we were so happy because I think the first Last of Us documentary was so amazing, and now to get another one where we're going to see what went behind Part 2, that's like, sign me up for that. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's like I'm really excited as a fan of The Last of Us to, one, have more Last of Us to consume, but also just to have something that is like an all-in-one collection of, you love this game, learn how they made it, play it. And that's I've been talking for a few minutes now, and we didn't even talk really much about the gameplay itself. The gameplay loop of The Last of Us Part 2 is some of the most fun I've had with a game. The mechanics of this game are incredible. There's a mix of stealth, a little Metal Gear Solid, a little Uncharted. You get everything in there. So I love that there is now a sandbox for me to return to, for me to pop into, for me to kill some clickers, kill some shamblers, take on some of the WLF or the Seraphites, and just play in that sandbox and play that mode. And, you know, I'm not a big fan of roguelites. I really loved my time with Valhalla. And with The Last of Us Part 2, I've done a few rounds of No Return, and I'm curious to go back. But I'm like you, Anthony. I'm like, when I die, I get really frustrated because I feel like I'm like, I didn't make progress. I couldn't save. I couldn't go forward. But the fact that I have something now that I could just open up, experience the gunplay, experience the melee, the combat of what The Last of Us Part 2 is, that's what really makes me fall in love with this game. And now to have like the perfect version of one of the best games ever made. So I'm curious, we know that The Last of Us Part 2 is going to be adapted for season 2 of the HBO series. We kind of want to know what you think. So you let us know in the comments and the replies. You let us know where you think season 2 will kind of wrap up, because they are going to break into 2. I want to ask you guys though, so Anthony and then Shay, where do you think season 2 is going to wrap up? What do you think is going to be the season finale from season 2 of the HBO series?
It will be, I think it would be a great cliffhanger right when Tommy and Jesse get ambushed by Abby in the theater. I think that's a great great and send off for that season 2 of Last of Us, because it just builds the momentum of, whoa, if you haven't played this game, whoa, what just happened? I just saw Jesse die. Abby's there. There's Ellie's there. There's a
Tommy
lot
got
of
shot.
conflict.
Yeah.
Tommy got shot by a gun. But it's just, there's a lot of like buildup for the third season, which we know as if we played it, we know what happens. But it's just for the casual viewer or someone who hasn't played the game, they're going to experience that sequence, because when we experienced that sequence, I think we were all shocked about just how the story kind of took place. And then we cut to, the story of Abby and where she gets her anger from and her revenge from. So I think and I can clearly see season 3 opening up with Abby and, running through the garden or the zoo or wherever that place
with
is in Seattle.
Zebra?
Yeah.
With the zebra. Like, that's just
100%.
a great season 3 opening.
That is a great opening. Yeah. 100%.
That's where I kind of play season 2's finale.
Right? Like, literally, like, the final lines will be like, "We let you live and you wasted it." And then he just
Boom.
cuts. Like,
Yeah.
What a moment. What a moment. Shay, how about yourself? What about you? Are you in the similar wavelength as Anthony, or are you thinking somewhere else?
Look, I mean, I think, yes, that's a great place to do it. But I think what I learned from season 1 is they've made a lot of changes to the way that the story is told. And some things, like, you look at, episode with Bill and
Frank?
Bill and Frank, that episode, like, that part is so different from the game. They're going to be doing the exact same thing when it comes to season 2 and 3 of this show. So I'm curious, is it smart to kind of have one whole season about Ellie and then one whole season about Abby? Like, when you look at it from a networking perspective, do you think viewers will want to tune in and see, like, oh my God, is this season all about this girl that we hate from last season? You kind of have to wonder, like, how are they going to be able to kind of interweave the story when it comes to telling it on TV? So I think that's a great spot, though, where Anthony mentioned to kind of, put a pin on that season and continue on forward. But I think they're going to do it a little differently. How they're going to do it, I have no idea. But I think it's going to be similar to what Anthony's saying, with a lot of twists in the way.
I think the biggest twist they could pull off is Joel doesn't die.
No, he's dead. He's dead.
No, no.
Could you imagine? No, and that's the thing, right?
Pop.
We know Pedro Pascal is very in demand right now, and I'm like, okay, how long is he going to be around? Is he going to stay? Is it the end of the first episode we're going to get rid of him? And obviously we'll have flashback episodes that we include him in. But, like, because he's obviously, like, even though Joel dies early in this game, he is in the game a lot still. So I'm curious, is that going to be similar what they do with Pedro? Are they going to go maybe episode Abby, episode Ellie? It's a lot, because you're like, yeah, are you going to have a whole season of that? Then you got to get into a Walking Dead scenario where you're like, man, like, we haven't seen what Carl why am I blanking on the name of the sheriff from Walking Dead? Oh my gosh.
Roger.
No, Rick. It's Rick.
I've never seen the show. I've never seen the show.
I've never seen the show either.
Where, like, it's kind of like that, where people knew going in what happens because they were fans of the comics. We're like, when we're spending a lot of time away from the main casts of what's happening, and then they gave spin-off shows. So I'm curious, do we, like, Nick Offerman, made reference to, like, there was talks of maybe doing a spin-off series where, almost like a Last of Us Factions, where every episode is, with different survivors, different things happening within the world of The Last of Us. So we could do that too. But I think, Anthony, I'm in the similar thought process as Anthony right now, but I also feel like there is so much that leads up. That is like a long time to get to that moment as well too. So what if they even end it sooner? You know what I mean? Like, what if Joel doesn't die until mid-season? Like, there's a lot of different things that they could do to really shake it up and to really spread it out to tell this story properly, right? Because The Last of Us Part 2 is a very dense story. There's a lot going on. There is Jackson, there is Seattle, there is California. There's so much that's happening. There's, like, the Seraphite Island. There's a lot. So I'm really curious to see how that is all adapted come season 2, but we'll find out hopefully later this year or early in 2025.
It is also a series that there's no more games after 2. So do they really extend it for 2 or 3 or 4 seasons, this portion of the game, so they can kind of catch up? Because you don't want to be ahead of the game.
Yeah, you don't want to be Game of Thrones,
right? You don't. But like, again, Game of Thrones is different because you have a writer that, you know, he's writing the book and he's really happy with what we see on screen. So it's a different story with video games because it takes so long. A book can really be done within 2 years, while a game can take 5, maybe 10 years, depending on what that next story looks like and whatever Naughty Dog's doing right now.
It's true, but fans have also been waiting for that last Game of Thrones book, I feel like, for like a decade. It's crazy. So, but yeah, I'm really curious. And, Last of Us Part 3 has to happen. I mean, I can't see them greenlighting a whole HBO show and then only going to adapt, the first and second game. I think there's a lot more stories to be told. And obviously, the series has deviated a lot from what the games have given us. It's an amazing adaptation, but there's a lot of little changes that they've done, right? So I'm really curious to see how that goes. But let's kind of bring it back to the game. Let's give our final recommendations for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered on PS5. Shahbaz, I would love for you to start us off.
I thought about this a lot, and I'm so kind of just everywhere with it. I think for $10, it's not too bad to get all those little perks that you're kind of getting, the director's commentary, the no return, and the lost levels, all that. I do believe it is worth the $10. Do I wish that PlayStation did it for free? Absolutely, because I think, this game should have that. But I also do like the fact that it's not a full price game if you wanted to go buy it. So I do believe that it's worth the $10, 100%. And I do also believe that if you've never bought this game or played this game before, you've done a disservice to yourself, and you need to play this game immediately, and you need to pay that full price. And I'm using air quotes because it's not really a full price game. It's still a lot cheaper. Go ahead, buy it, play it on PS5, and just fall in love with how amazing this game absolutely is.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Shay. For me, the $10 upgrade for what you're getting, if you're a fan of The Last of Us, it is absolutely worth it. That commentary alone is worth it. To have the best version of one of the best games ever made is worth it for me. And if you've never played The Last of Us, if you're going into this game, I'm so sorry we spoiled so much for you in this review, but if you're going into The Last of Us Part 2, never having played it, and you're like, you know what, let me actually experience this for myself, that price that they're offering this game at is worth it. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's one of the best games ever made. We called it a real gem when it came out. The story is still exactly that, and there's some extras there for you. Yes, it would have been cool to get more. It would have been great to get, factions, because we know we're not getting that game, because the gameplay is so rich in this. You only want to spend more time with it. You want to be with it more. But yeah, I'm right with Anthony too. I think new guns, new things could have really added to this experience too. But the fact that we now have a version of it on the most modern systems, I'm hoping there'll be maybe updates and maybe additional things to come down the road as, news of what's to come with Naughty Dog comes around. But yeah, I definitely think it's worth your $10 and worth your time. Anthony, take us home.
This game is made for two types of people. It's for the hardcore fans and for those who haven't played the game yet. And I think if you fall in either boat, I think this is a great option for you. If you haven't played this game, this is and you just got a PS5, Christmas was around the corner, maybe you just finally got your PS5 and you want to play Last of Us 2, this is a great addition. If you're a hardcore Last of Us fan, you're going to love everything about it. What's $10, especially for a digital version? You pay $10, you get a bunch of stuff that is included. I think the most valuable stuff is the commentary, and you get excited for what's to come in the future. And I think that's a really, really cool thing that Naughty Dog's doing. Again, I wish it was free. I wish they kind of shared some sort of loyalty to their fans in that sense, where it's like, hey guys, thank you for being a part of this world. Thank you for being a part of the Last of Us series. Here's this, addition. But if it is what it is. $10. There's so many things that we can say about $10. What's $10, and then what's $10 for this huge company? So there's a hit or miss in that conversation. But I found a lot of value with the commentary track, and I would probably pay that $10 just to listen to it again.
Fantastic. Thank you, Shahbaz. Thank you, Anthony. And thank you to PlayStation for providing us with codes for the game. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered comes out on PS5 this week, January 19th. You could revisit I think truly one of the best stories in video games and play it in the best way that you could possibly play it. Of course, this is the Movie Podcast. We have lots of incredible episodes out right now, and we have some big changes coming your way. So if you want to hear everything that we have going on later this week, tune in for our new main episode on Friday, the best movies of 2023, and a lot more ways to support the show. But in the meantime, make sure you follow us on socials at the Movie Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, X, Letterboxd, wherever you are, the Movie Podcast will be there. Join our Discord, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, leave a comment below, leave us 5 stars on Spotify, join the polls. There's so many ways that you can interact with us, and and maybe listen to an ad or two because it definitely supports the show as well. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.